Would you look at that?
We're
We're
flurrying
live.
here too.
Hey, we're here a few minutes early. Play some music.
Unexpected technical success.
We got a little bit of music. Welcome again to another episode of News Sausage. That's the name of our show. I am one of your hosts here, Dan Marks, and thanks again for tuning in and listening. We are the program. What the? Hold on a second. I've got a live cat here. Hold on.
Added excitement.
Can't have the cat meowing the entire episode here while we speak.
Well, good.
But we are the program. That's right. So we are the program that grinds up the news of the week and serves it to you in this sausagey kind of format. Again, I'm Dan Marks, and with me, as always, is our co-host, Sunny Riverside. Say hello, Sunny.
Well, good morning, Dan. It's
good morning. Well, it's afternoon.
It's morning for me.
Well, I'm enjoying my first cup of coffee here too, and watching flurries outside at 30 degrees here in Des Moines. We are live, by the way, so this is happening right now.
As we speak, there are flurries in Johnson County as well. Halfway across.
Really?
Yeah. Halfway
Big
across
flurries?
the Midwest.
Oh,
Indeed.
man. It's not welcome at this time of the year. This is the worst time of the year to see snow. It's kind of. My kids were just telling me that the snow is kind of magical at the beginning of the season because they grew up in Hawaii, and they're like, this year still again when it came, it was wonderful and neat, but he admits that seeing snowflakes come down now is kind of an come on moment. So
right. Oh, I'm worried for the wildlife. For the last 3 years, we've had doves nest and raise broods in hanging flowers on our deck. And this morning, I saw one big fat dove. It looks like she's probably full of eggs, sitting on the rail. But it's too cold to have fresh flowers out there for them. So I've gotten a dead flower. I've sent the dove dead flowers hanging up. So hopefully, I'll have a place to nest if they need to.
You're right. I was just about to put plants out this morning until I realized how cold it really was. But seems like that time of year. But good Lord, it's a little that's trying my soul. So that's what I'm going to preach about here on Sunday. Well, we do actually have some pretty interesting things to talk about here today, and you've got one particular item. I wanted to let you go first, but again, we are live, so if there's anybody that happens to see us out there on the Facebook universe, please feel free to join in and comment on the in the comments here under the video. We're watching live, so if you have any questions or you want to even talk about a whole different topic, I am one that loves to go off on tangents, so please hit us with whatever you got there. So with no further ado, Sonny, you wanted to talk about one particular story in particular this week.
Yeah, what about this great steward of the American Trust?
Scott Pruitt?
Oh, yes. It was so pressing on my mind, I couldn't remember his name. Great steward of the American Trust, Scott Pruitt, the man in charge of dismantling the EPA.
Well, I'm going to give you a pass on this one because keeping track of all the villains out there in DC these days is like trying to sort out who's Marvel comic books character villains and who's the other comic book source there, but it's a little more than the average person can keep track of.
It's getting out of hand. And what I think is really interesting about this Pruitt thing, the thing that I find interesting about the Pruitt thing is that he's finally gotten to the point where the conservatives are turning on him, not because he is doing exactly the opposite of what his job is supposed to be, but because he's wasting money in the process of doing it.
Well, that's kind of the pot calling the kettle black there, isn't it? It's holy moly. They, they're just spending money like it's going out of style. They're busting the budget right now. I mean, they all are. They're all kind of fleecing the country. To have them turn on each other like that is that kind of confuses me. I don't know where they're coming from on that.
Well, right. As this crop of mismanagement has been unleashed on us, it reminds me of what happens when very privileged teenagers are given access to dad's credit card without realizing that somebody has to pay for it eventually. And they're out going to, spending money on whatever frivolous item they feel necessary, like a whole lot of money for a special desk in their office, flying first class because they do such horrible things that it's not safe for them to mix with the general population.
Right, right. Well, it does seem like that they even have this perception where we are the ones to be ruled. Yes. This is not a government of the people. This is just the government, and they are here to tell us how things need to be done, and we need to obey. Even Stephen Miller went on CNN and said that the authority of the president shall not be challenged. So there is kind of a top-down mentality to all this. Right. And the destruction of the EPA right now is they don't seem to have any real grasp of the reality of the situation. And I was just speaking to my son about what he has ahead of him in his life and the challenges of his generation. And
sorry about that.
Yeah. Well, I kind of put it in perspective that our parents grew up in a world where there were, their reality was that there were these unlimited resources available to them, and that's how they lived. Like there's always going to be more oil. It's easy to come by. You can get rich being an oil man in Texas. Remember, and the world just didn't work like that. And by the 1970s, we started to have to start to live by a more economical way of dealing with these resources, and kind of a new approach. And the gas lines that we saw in the 70s were just kind of blindsided everybody. And we've not done the best job possible, but with each generation, I have 4 kids. If my kids, that what that does to the population exponentially, if they have 4 kids, I mean, that's the needs of so many more people for cars and goods and bottle caps. Just how many more bottle caps we're talking about with that many more people, and everybody wants to have that kind of life. So those demands and the realities that they're going to have to face, it's going to force them to be so much more focused on recycling and how to avoid using those materials in the first place, so much more than what we're living through right now. But that's just a matter of survival for them, what I think. So,
and what really Well, what really gets to me on that same line of thought is, yes, the first part of the 20th century, our parents, our grandparents, maybe not our grandparents as much, but our parents certainly had the philosophy that the earth is so plentiful in resources that we'll just keep using them and we won't have to worry about it. And then in the 70s, as you mentioned, there became an awareness that, whoa, hey, that's not really the case. And then there was a trend for quite some time, innovation and uh,
Right.
conservation, such that we moved technologically toward a model where we were consuming less. And that's all been reversed like in the blink of an eye, it seems that suddenly we don't have to worry about that. Or that's not accurate, but there is a new subsect of our culture who feels that it's not necessary, that the notion of finite resources being consumed was a hoax. It was false news,
Right.
and it's really not a thing. Uh, there was, I heard an ad on the radio the other day where one of the big car manufacturers has taken an environmental step backwards and is introducing for the
Right.
2018 model year uh, diesel engines in a vehicle that had not previously used diesel engines. And a few years ago, it sure seemed that we were going to be moving towards hybrids and straight up
Right.
electric vehicles, and that's being rolled back. And it's troubling. And what are we going to tell our children?
Right. Exactly. Um, yeah. No, they're in deep. We and you kind of alluded to a point there too, where there's this new approach to our national natural resources, and it didn't used to be like that. Certainly, many of the national parks were created by Teddy Roosevelt, who was conservative, and that
And
was
and
even. Go ahead.
and conservationist as well. Exactly. The parks were created with forethought, recognizing that if we don't protect them now, if the federal government doesn't put up a boundary around all of these wonderful natural things that only exist in one place in the whole world ever, they will be gone and they will never exist again. And that's being
And
uh,
yes.
fed into the jaws of the coal miners. It's crazy.
Right. Well, that's kind of where we're at right now. That's for sure. It's uh, a nightmare fully realized, where we're starting to go after those archaeological finds out in Utah, and it's being revealed that it's clearly a lot of drilling motivations, and
Right.
if this is, Carl Gibson in one of our previous episodes alluded to one of Noam Chomsky's quotes, and that he said that this Republican Party is today is not a normal party. It's clearly corporatist, uh, uh, racist, misogynist, and must be stopped at really all by all means necessary. And it certainly isn't mindful of the best interests of the country at all, and it's more focused on its own power and gaining more power within the country and in the global space. But at the same time, it's not working, and we're alienating ourselves from the world with the trade policies and environmental policies, and it's just one thing after another, where um, the crazies have really taken over the asylum out here. It feels like.
And I think that is an accurate analogy too. There's not. I, I don't know how to. how to label it. It's hard to call them crazy because apart from the president for the moment, straight up evil.
Right.
I mean,
Well, but
seriously, they certainly know what it is that they're doing, what they're saying, what the policies are that they are instituting. There can be no other explanation. You, I've struggled with this for years. Are they dumb or are they evil? And I'm swinging now towards they must be evil because nobody's that dumb.
right. Well, I agree. I agree. I kind of wondered the other day if Fox News employees realize, what they're doing to the country, or if they actually believe this stuff. And I've had some conversations with some very well-educated uh, attorneys on the right, and they're very well informed. They can talk politics all day long, but then they start saying things like no, no, Nazis are socialists, and it's like, no, come on, you don't really believe that stuff, or we have the best healthcare system in the world, and
Right.
no, no, we don't, and it's pretty much the fact. You can look it up. It's just
Right.
one thing
You
after another.
can.
Where they're just
You can
they
look it up.
they believe these things that are just verifiable. You can check and see. That kind of reminds me about the other thing I wanted to talk about this week too, and that was um, amosexuals.
Okay.
I've been
Yeah.
seeing a lot of this nuttiness pour into the what I call the amosexual movement. Um, they love their guns so much. They want to
Yeah.
shoot their guns so
Right.
um, they love their guns. I mean, we saw recently conservatives marrying their guns in a big ceremony in a church, mass marriage ceremony. They had a
What?
yeah they we'll let
I had not
those
seen that.
yeah, it was part of the um, it was a church. I can't remember who it was, but yes, they did. They actually married their guns, and we've seen a lot of reaction in response to the Parkland High School shooting in Florida, and it's kind of been over the top. And I recently watched a video where Vice News covered a preacher being confronted by these conspiracy theorists who drove there to make this prove that his daughter existed and was actually shot there,
Oh,
and
right.
it was jaw dropping, and I mean you couldn't
Cruel.
help. Yeah, my heart just broke for the guy that had to sit there and deal with this, and I mean these people have been over the top, and we've seen YouTube even start to respond to these people by banning a lot of um, gun lover videos. I don't know how else to describe it. They're just going around shooting and showing everybody how to use these guns and espouting philosophies that are highly objectionable. But it's still basically free speech. But YouTube is not public space; it's private. So they have policies and say, we don't want to have this crap on here anymore. And it's forced gun enthusiasts to literally go on Pornhub to shoot their guns. Now, if you don't think that these guys are amosexuals, why are they going on Pornhub to shoot their guns? I think by definition, it's a little too
Oh
apropos.
man, it never goes off early like that. I don't know what happened.
Oh, it's yes, I know. We could,
Oh, Oh man.
Don't want anybody shooting blanks or you know anything like that. It's it's a little
See how
too on the
long
nose to
my
see.
rifle is? Sorry.
So they've kind of gone over the top here, and this last week, Laura Ingraham even attacked David Hogg, one of the outspoken students who survived that attack, and they're just trying to defend these rights to have these toys, basically. That
Right.
they're toys. They're something they want to play with, and they do pose an unreasonable threat to public safety. And she's coming out against him and telling him to basically shut up and go to class, like she told LeBron James to shut up and dribble. But
Oh jeez. Oh jeez.
even LeBron James gets into this Twitter war with this woman, and he cannot nearly impact her the way that David Hogg does when he tweets a list of the advertisers on her show who just flee and dump her uh, throughout the week. She's got nothing left. I think she's still on vacation right now. But this kid just absolutely cleaned her clock with this tweet, and I'm really proud of these kids. And we kind of talked about, should we talk about guns on one of these episodes, because we really like the way that these kids are taking the lead on this and realizing their power and their authority within their world. And it's existed for us all the time too, but they have seized it the way that I've always wished that people would
Right.
do. And it's beautiful to see that.
I agree. And harken back. Do you remember the interview that I did with my friend Clara Olson during the Women's March, where she remarked her age? She's in her mid-70s.
Right, I do.
Watching the young people participating politically, and she was amazed. And she kind of gave us some foreshadowing. I believe her words were, "Look, there are more of these millennials than there were baby boomers." And once they find a direction and get their organization, just imagine the impact they can have and the change they can make. And I believe we're beginning to see it now.
Right, right. And I think this is really just the beginning of what this generation could do. And like we were talking about with the environment, we really do need to make great strides. I've been a very strong constitutional enthusiast for years now, and one point that was made years ago when I was discussing these kinds of amendment proposals we could do is that every generation of our nation so far has made some kind of fingerprint on the Constitution. They've all added something to it that made it a difference in some way. Um, but ours hasn't. We haven't
I was just
made.
going to observe that perhaps the mark our generation has left on the Constitution might just be a ring from setting a coffee cup on it.
Well put. However, I do think we're going to make up for lost time, but it's just kind of. I think we've been lulled into this kind of sense that there's nothing that we can do to change our world, and that's just not the case. And these kids are showing really it's very possible. And it's not nearly as hard as what we would imagine once we start kind of coming together and forming these moments where we have consensus on certain ideas. and we don't just speak for ourselves. We speak for all of us when we have that kind of consensus, and I think that's that's really the power that they're exhibiting, and I think we should all kind of learn from this. And I really like that they're taking the forefront on this, but they're still kids, and
Right.
we've got people like our own Steve King, who's out there um, really attacking Emma Gonzalez. She just he did a tweet. I'll read it for you here real quick. He says, "This is how you look when you claim Cuban heritage yet don't speak Spanish and ignore the fact that your ancestors fled the island when the dictatorship turned Cuba into a prison camp after removing all the weapons from its citizens, hence their right to self-defense." um, this guy
Huh.
just can't wait to underscore the fact that somebody is not American,
Right.
or not white enough. She's an American. She's a U.S. citizen, and basically, I mean, where is he from? Where is his
I
heritage? Let's compare the history of his country's heritage. This girl is 18 years old, and she's being blamed for something that happened in a country from her heritage. And,
right
and
at the age of her grandparents.
right, and I mean, we had weapons um, to fight with, and our country just turned out like this.
Well, I think the
Cuba
point that
is, you know, it's not a prison camp now. We have a
no,
prison camp there.
right. I think the point that gets misconstrued, the pushback from the right, the NRA, the conservative channels, is that they are equating limiting the sale and possession of assault weapons with a complete and total gun ban. And
Right.
that is the scare tactic they're using. Well, first they came for the assault weapons, and then they came for my shotgun, and then they came for my Derringer. Where does it end? Then I can't defend myself against the oppressive regime. Well, I don't mean to burst anyone's balloon, but you can't defend yourself against this regime if it turned on its own people anyway, with
Right.
helicopters, airplanes, and armies.
And I hate to say it, but that's not too far beyond the realm of possibility. And you know, this kind of I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but hey, it's live. Let's just do it. Um, um, Trump recently talked about the death penalty for drug dealers. Um,
Yeah,
I, a lot
works
of
for the other
people.
dictators.
That's right, and he did specifically point out that he would like to do it the way that the Philippines and China do.
Yeah,
Duterte, the evil dictator that's probably going to come up on war crimes pretty soon,
right,
because he executed about 8,000 people for drugs. Well,
right. And I believe it was really aggressive that the police were allowed to just shoot someone that they believed was in possession of an illegal drug, just shoot them on site without any due process, without any provocation. It was an
well,
extermination program.
right. And the fact is, drugs still exist in those countries. Smaller
Sure.
problem. It's way underground, and they probably don't have any good ways to track what's really going on because it's so far underground.
Right.
But the way that specifically the Philippines and China have used that death penalty drug policy was not specifically to root out drugs, because we've always found that you know reducing harm of drugs is way better than increasing penalty and punishment. And certainly killing people isn't going to solve anybody's drug problem. Like the true um, uh, motive behind a lot of these arrests and executions in the Philippines had nothing to do with drugs. It was about crushing dissent, and they blamed people for using drugs. And we've seen um, Jeff Sessions say things like, "There are no good people that smoke marijuana. They're all bad
Right.
people." So it kind of gives them permission. Okay, well, here's this particular, uh, let's say there's somebody in the Democrat Party who happens to be pulled over, has a joint in his car, and he's killed in the process or something like that. He was a bad guy anyway. Pretty easy to excuse it. And what kind of gets me is, Hitler, when he started burning books, the first books he wanted to burn were pornography, you know. So when you're talking about expanding the death penalty, let's talk about, let's go after drug dealers first. These are the things that it's really easy for everybody to go, well, I'm
Yeah.
not a drug dealer, so I didn't do anything about it. And I don't want to really stand up for drug dealers either, you know. But
Oh,
at
right.
first he made it sound like it was just about people that were importing drugs, but then it became very clear that he's talking about any drug dealers. And under current law, if you don't have to sell it to people if you like share your heroin with somebody and they have an overdose, you're going to get charged with involuntary manslaughter or something like that.
Right. That
And
goes
could do
back to
some
the
time.
Len Bias case in the 80s.
Right, right. So this kind of where you point the blame, and then also these people would then be subject to death penalties. And I mean, it's could be the beginning of kind of isolating groups of people somehow, and then literally lining them up. If he's talking about doing this just like Duterte did in the Philippines, killing 8,000 people is, that's quite a lot of dissent potentially to be getting rid of. And I've made a lot of posts on Facebook, and suddenly I'm no drug dealer, but boy, I don't want to be put on that list.
Right. Right. They're watching, and they have we we are voluntarily participating in their surveillance through our online existence and our online world community that we participate in. People
Right,
forget that when they sign up for the social media, that they are allowing free and ready access to their whatever amount of information they choose to share.
right. Well, even with the Republicans controlling all three branches of the federal government and most of the
Yeah,
state
hang on a second. I'm going
legislatures,
to
and
pause there for a minute.
yeah,
All three branches, and you said it, you hit it right on the nose, that it's been a matter of uh, Trump is probably sending people by Ruth Bader Ginsburg's house to drop firecrackers, hoping that they can scare her into a heart attack. He really wants to load the Supreme Court with his cronies that are the same as his cabinet. They're not even qualified. His last appointment proposal was not even qualified to practice law, much less be a justice of the Supreme Court. But they have
right,
ties to the corporate moneyed interest, and they're going to be a shill for those interests when they're in the court for a lifetime appointment. And he's appointing 40-year-olds. That is,
right,
that's not what the court is about. The court is supposed to be nonpartisan and neutral, It's not
Right.
supposed to be your lapdog. So
Exactly.
sorry to interrupt you there, but that
No, no, that's
you
okay.
said it. You said it straight through, though. They're controlling all three branches of government. Sorry,
Right.
sorry to interrupt. Back to
No,
your
no,
point that I've
that's okay.
meandered from.
But what I was going to mention there too was that it's getting to the point too where they control all of this government, all of it, and they're still so upset that these kids would start this movement to get rid of just these assault weapons, the high-powered, you know, large magazine weapons that kill people in moments. Um, that you know they're so upset about this that South Carolina congressman this week actually introduced legislation to make it okay for the state of South Carolina to secede over gun rights.
Wow.
This is real. They
Right.
feel threatened enough about this one issue that they're actually thinking about seceding from a government they control because, I think they know this November. I don't want to get overconfident, but I think we're going to win back some seats. We might even control both houses of Congress. But hopefully our turnout is very, very high. But
Right.
they, after this November election, are so tweaky right now that I'm really nervous about what these guys are going to do once we take control of, let's say, the House of Representatives. They're not even running for re-election in most of these, well, not most,
Right.
but many of these seats. If it's very likely we're going to take back the House, and then it becomes even more likely if Trump is still in office, which I don't think, but it becomes more likely that we will impeach and reverse a lot of these things that they've put in motion, and it's going to send these people off. They're going to say that we're the ones that are, anti-democracy and feel empowered to take up arms against an oppressive government. And it kind of makes me nervous about potential of a real civil war in 2019 over this election and these particular issues. And because I've never seen this level of searing hatred and and just just no grasp of reality. They're living in a different world right now. And at this point, I support this bill to allow South Carolina to secede.
And why is that?
I think I think it's time to just let them go. We should just say, you know what? You guys are very different than us, and you should be your own country. And the South should just go ahead and regroup down there, and well, we won't have to pay all that extra out in federal aid too. So that probably work out better in the long run for the rest of us. But think about
Trim the.
how much the electoral map uh, swings in our favor just getting rid of South Carolina. You know,
Oh,
um,
that's a good point. I've
I
contemplated
don't.
that many times. We should have callously have said before. We should have just let them go.
Well, I think
150 years ago.
I think this time I'm okay with it. If push comes to shove, oh, all right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't see any other way. There's no middle ground anymore with people who embrace Nazis and attack children because they didn't like being attacked with automatic military weapons. It's gone past the point of you know, being able to just sit next to some of these people. It,
Right.
I think a lot of them on the right are also finding trouble stomaching things that are going on the extreme right, and at some point, it's just gotta it's gonna come to an end. At least they're not going to have the political power here pretty soon. So it'll I don't know how this is going to play out, but it's making me very concerned.
Indeed.
Long dramatic pause there. All right. Well, I am out of coffee here, so I need to go get another cup of coffee. So we are pretty much out of time too. So any
Oh,
last words there, Sonny?
well, shoot, I wanted to talk about Syria, but if we're out of
Oh,
time,
Syria?
yeah,
You know, I can put off my coffee here for a little while. We're live. It doesn't matter. So,
right. So I had an eye opener yesterday reading BBC News and getting into some of the details about what's going on in Syria because I feel vastly uninformed of what it's all about because it's so complicated. But the thing that I found striking in this article, the BBC did a great job of uh, what is the war about? Who's involved? And it's the same story as so many places in the Middle East. It is different facets of of Muslims who can't get along. It's Sunnis against Shia in Syria as well. So when I started looking, who is participating in the warfare? Well, we know everyone knows Russia's been involved. Iran
yeah,
is involved. The
yeah,
U.S., the U.K., France, other Western countries providing various degrees of what they consider of support for what they consider moderate rebels. But in addition, Turkey is supporting the rebels.
sure.
Saudi Arabia is is interacting to counter Iranian influence, and then Israel is taking sides, blowing up shipments of Iranian weapons to Hezbollah. It's just absolutely insane. There are so many different factions, and
Right.
they're pulling in different directions. Basically, they're just dividing up the country of Syria to expand their own borders to provide buffers against their respective neighbors. And unfortunately, there's hundreds of thousands of civilians who have been killed, 13.1 million people who need humanitarian aid. There's 5.6 million refugees internationally and 6.1 million who are internally displaced. Whatever is, whatever the ultimate outcome of the Syrian conflict is, it's not going to have a happy ending, and it's not going to end anytime soon. If all the bombs stop dropping now, we've still got homeless, hungry, injured, diseased, killed people that are going to need attention, and the infrastructure has been completely decimated by all of this combat. I I hesitate to even try to comprehend what is ultimately going to come out of this.
Right. I That's kind of one of those things just I think we need to stay the heck out of it. I don't
Right.
think there is going to be a good outcome of it. We certainly don't need to dump billions of dollars into it.
Well,
Um,
we already have one hand and one foot on this tar baby. So now what
yeah.
do we do?
Well, I I don't I don't think it's such a problem that we can't withdraw ourselves from. Um, I could be wrong, and I don't know certainly all of the different things that's going on there, but it does seem to be that the United States has more of an interest in making sure that a pipeline crosses that country than the well-being of the people of Syria. In fact, I kind of get the impression that that we really don't care at all about the Syrian people, um, their leadership. I feel like that they want to take them out. Of course, they can't. That's not you know. But this guy is a popularly elected leader in their country. He's not a good guy, but
Assad?
right, right. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we should just back the heck off. And you know, Russia has interests, and they're cooperating with this guy. They're friends with him, and they have
They've
their
got more than interest.
yeah,
They've got they've got an awful lot of military and weapons and people on the ground.
yeah, and it's boy, it was just mentioned. I can't remember, but it was a right wing hawk just over the last couple of days had mentioned that we are going to have to end up going to war with Syria and Iran and Russia, and we should be getting ready for that. And there probably is some truth to that, but that's if everything stays on its present course. We don't have to stay on our present course. We don't have to mindlessly run towards that cliff and jump off every damn time there's a conflict in the world. We can let this one just kind of sort itself out and deal with the aftermath and contain it. Um, Israel
Mm. Yeah.
has plenty of weaponry to defend itself in case this thing spills over into their area.
Oh, oh, that's right, because we give it to
That's right. That's
them.
right. We just gave them a heck of a lot more. So put it to use, Israel. Stop getting us into their crap. So I don't know. Maybe you're for more war in Syria, but I'm for a lot less.
Oh, I am not in favor of it in any respect. I'm concerned about what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
This, we've it's broken. It's broken into a million pieces, and now, and it's not through being more fractured. The damage continues every day, and there's no sign of it stopping. And if when we withdraw, there is some concern of what the ultimate outcome of that will be, because now, because of our involvement, we now are targets from the various interests.
Right.
It's just astonishing.
Yeah.
It's hard to comprehend.
Well, I'm sure with the addition of John Bolton to the defense or to the Trump team,
Oh, geez.
I think that it's inevitable. We are gearing up for war if Trump is not taken out of office, if he does not resign. But Pence right behind him might pull the same crap. So I I don't know. We've seen the market slide over and over with these trade wars.
Yeah.
How much worse is it going to get with the real war with the real world power like Russia? I think this is not a good situation for anybody. I just saw an analyst on CNBC this week. We've got the market up around 26, 2400. It's bobbling around a lot. The S&P, and he was saying that because of these trade wars, the new target floor that they're looking at is around 1800, and people should start buying stocks again when the market crashes about 30%. Well, that's today. If we're in a shooting war with Russia, uh, it's going to get worse because we're not in good standing with China. I mean, we're not in good standing with
No.
Germany.
Yeah, we're
So
not in good standing with NATO, for Pete's sake.
right, right. So You know, if we get attacked, the rest of them can just fold their arms and go, "Eh,
Right.
you weren't so
Right.
sure about that, so whatever."
We've
Uh,
in such a short order, Trump has alienated so many of our allies, or if not allies, at least uh, friendly trading partners.
yeah. I was kind of thinking that Trump was like the anti-Lincoln the other day. He was kind of he's not the anti-Christ, he's the anti-Lincoln. He's the guy that wants to put people back in slavery and divide the country and um, totally different person. So he's kind of the antithesis of the Abraham Lincoln character. Uh, uh, how did we get here from that? Hopefully this is the end of the Republican Party because they have to me I think they've ruined their brand so much that I don't think anybody's ever going to vote for them again. But then again, I'm very surprised by the amount of white nationalists marching through the streets these days. I keep seeing videos of their stuff, so the world's getting a little too crazy.
All right. Well, where's that reset button?
Well, I know where the reset button is, but we'll talk about that on another show.
All right.
All right. Speaking of which, let's wrap this one up. We
All right.
want to say thanks again for tuning in to New Sausage. And you can always check us out on Stitcher, iTunes, Spreaker, uh, Podomatic, Patreon. Please go to Patreon and donate and become a supporter of our program. And any last words there, Sonny?
Well, last words I have is hope springs eternal, and spring it will be here one day. Everyone's mood will improve, and yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. I don't have a whole lot of positivity today.
No deep thoughts by Sonny Riverside today. So
Not today. Not today.
all right. Well, thanks again for listening. Aloha, everybody.
Be good, Dan.